Many are called, few are chosen. R.A. Dickey was one of the chosen, an athlete with skills so refined that it seemed inevitable that he'd dominate in the majors. He was chosen, in fact, in the first round of the 1996 MLB draft by the Texas Rangers, and as the 18th overall pick, he was a bona fide prospect from the get-go. But by the 2007 season, R.A. had found himself pitching for the AAA Nashville Sounds for yet another minor league season. It was during a road trip to Council Bluffs, Iowa, that Dickey stood in his hotel room and looked down to the churning Missouri River, that fabled ribbon of water that had taken Lewis and Clark into lands unknown. Where would it take a 32-year-old pitcher whose career seemed as washed out as the plains he languished in? No longer the property of the Rangers, Dickey was now part of the Milwaukee Brewers organization. Being stuck in Council Bluffs can play tricks on your mind. Being stuck in AAA at the age of 32 can reduce you to a blubbering mass of anxiety. This prompted Dickey to have an idea. Why don't I swim across the river? That decision would change the course of his life in many ways. It doesn't seem possible that a confused, depressed, deeply intelligent person could descend to the depths only to rise to the very apex of his profession 5 years later, becoming one of the oldest Cy Young Award winners in MLB history. Right there, that statement. 5 years later, Dickey was 32 in AAA, and he'd already bombed in the major leagues multiple times. How could someone hold on for that long, at an age when many pitchers are coaching back in their hometowns and starting second careers? Given the cutthroat way that baseball treats players on the margins, Dickey's 2012 Cy Young with the Mets seemed like a made-for-TV heart-tugger that's as plausible as Air Bud. And, as if to add to the bizarre nature of his ascension, Dickey threw a pitch that literally no one else in the major leagues threw in 2012, a knuckleball, a pitch of infamy that somehow has produced greatness in spurts despite the misgivings of almost every front office exec since the days of Hoyt Wilhelm. But the knuckleball pitchers who make it are always the ones who are broken by the game, the hungry ones who don't mind hanging on by their fingertips, the weird ones who don't mind being outcasts, the fighters who don't know when to quit even when they probably should. That's R.A. Dickey in a nutshell. But R.A.'s story almost did come to an end in 2007 when the mighty Missouri battled a mere mortal whose will to win was driving him to utter despair. A despair born from unspeakable acts against a child who could only find peace through sports. Instead of trying to swim across the river, a sane man would have walked away from both it and the game that was threatening his inner peace. Dickey never did make it fully across the river, but he did end up making it to New York, and having one of the greatest, most unlikely, pleasingly redemptive seasons in baseball history, then a string of productive seasons following. So, how did he do it? But before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, and how you can get involved with your favorite teams and players every single day, in any of the major sports, including MLB, NHL, NFL, and NBA. With Underdog's Pick'em, you choose between the over or under on a multitude of daily available stats, ranging from strikeouts, hits, touchdowns, passing yards, even their individualized fantasy points. Then you simply select 2 to 5 picks, and if your picks are correct, you can win anywhere from 3 to 20 times your initial entry amount. Or, if those stakes are a little too high for you, you can always go with their insurance system, which allows you to get one pick incorrect in exchange for a lower multiplier. Overall, I think it's a great way to have some fun with your favorite sports, and maybe make a little money while you're doing it. Getting started is simple. Go to underdog.com and sign up with promo code MTC. As of right now, they're matching initial deposits up to $500. Again, that's underdogfantasy.com with promo code MTC to see them match your initial deposit up to $500. Now, back to our video. It's not accurate to say that R.A. Dickey had a childhood. He was legally a child, sure, but at the age of 8, ungodly things happened to him that robbed him of his boyhood forever. His dad was a construction worker and left when R.A. was 7, leaving him to live with his mother, who was then struggling in the throes of alcoholism. Nashville is a home to country music, which is home to all kinds of heartache and heartbreak. It is also the place that R.A. Dickey still calls home, where he grew up a 3-sport star and then went off to the University of Tennessee to become a star pitcher and academic All-American. On the surface, it seems like Dickey would have been the product of a stable middle-class home, where hard work is rewarded and children are tucked in at night with a sweet kiss. Not quite. Because his mother's addiction often kept her out at night, Dickey was taken to various babysitters, including a 13-year-old girl who abused him several times during the summer he turned 8. Later that same summer, Dickey was touched by a 17-year-old boy. We know these horrible things because Dickey, one of the most humane and literate men to ever play Major League Baseball, has written about the episodes. Yes, publicly, and by his own volition. But he didn't begin writing about the horror until 2005, and so, for years, Dickey kept these secrets to himself. The trauma made him feel like there was something wrong with him, that he was dirty, and so he threw himself into becoming an elite athlete through sheer determination. He would launch footballs late into the night, shoot hoops in the snow, and stay on the baseball field so long he earned the name Lapdog for how he'd follow his coach around. As Dickey explained, sports served as kind of a punishment for his alleged sins and as a way to make himself feel better, a paradox only victims of abuse can understand. During high school, he bounced between mother and father, but mostly he felt alone and isolated, often sleeping in his car. He loved the Star Wars franchise and lost himself in that fantasy world where boys grew into heroes. At Montgomery Bell Academy, Dickey was the epitome of the well-rounded student athlete. Starting QB and starting shoot guard, Dickey also used that athleticism to dominate on the mound. His senior year, he tossed 3 no-hitters, going 15-3 while fanning 122 in 60 innings. The Tigers were impressed and took him in the 10th round of the 1993 draft, but Dickey decided not to sign and went to Knoxville instead. At Tennessee, Dickey started lifting for the first time and added 20 pounds of muscle. A high 80s fastball became a mid-90s one, to go with a funky delivery and a burning desire to win. He became the school's only 3-time All-American, going 38-10 during his career with the Vols. Then, in the 1996 draft, Dickey went 18th overall in the first round to the Texas Rangers. The former 10th rounder was going to get paid, real money of somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million. That's a lot of money even today, but even more so when you consider that was almost 30 years ago. But nothing about R.A.'s rise to stardom was a straight line. After getting drafted, Dickey went to Arlington to sign his contract worth $810,000. For the son of a construction worker and receptionist, that was life-changing. He'd sign and then throw out the first pitch of that night's Rangers game. But Dickey had pitched for Team USA in the 1996 Olympics, and he had appeared on the cover of Baseball America with the other starters. All very innocent, until a Texas team trainer noticed something odd about the way Dickey's elbow was bent. Instead of signing his contract, Dickey went in for a closer examination, which revealed he had no UCL, or ulnar collateral ligament. Yeah, not a torn one mind you, but none at all. No UCL, no deal. The Rangers were sure that Dickey's elbow would become a huge problem, even though he had made it this far without one. Doctors were shocked that Dickey could even turn a doorknob without pain, but he could. Nevertheless, the Rangers withdrew their offer and countered with another, $75,000, less than a tenth of what he would have made otherwise. Dickey felt like he had to take this fraction of his bonus because no other team would sign him, ever. It was take it or leave it. R.A. decided to take it. Dickey never had his UCL fixed, if you could even call it that. What's more, he never really had any significant elbow issues during his long career. In baseball and in life, money talks. If a team spends $800,000 on a player, that player will get every chance to prove his worth. When a team spends under $100,000, you're considered more so a dime a dozen. You're fighting with everyone else for a spot somewhere in affiliated baseball. That fateful Baseball America cover had made Dickey into an afterthought. Yet, being fearlessly competitive, Dickey charged forward, and by 2001, he was making his MLB debut with the Rangers. He was 26, and still clinging to the hopes of being a traditional fastball slider pitcher. But in his 4 games, he gave up 3 home runs and walked 7 in just 12 innings. So, he spent the next season in AAA Oklahoma, where he started throwing something called the Thing, which he said at the time was a forkball, but was in fact a hard knuckleball. He got back up to the show in 2003, where he became a starter in July. His pitching coach was Orel Hershiser, and Dickey was thinking he could slide in as perhaps the 5th starter. Dickey at the time was also working with former knuckleballer Charlie Huff on his grip, though Dickey's knuckleball remained a work in progress. Between 2003 and 2005, in 3 separate stints with the club, Dickey went 16-17 with an ERA of .579. He gave up 1.3 homers per 9 innings, lots of hard contact, and his max velo just kept dropping, eventually cratering down into the mid-80s. He kept bouncing between the minors and the majors, and he knew that it was just a matter of time before he'd get cut. There would be one final indignity. Dickey made the squad coming out of spring training in 2006, a huge accomplishment for fringe players. His first start was the 4th game of that season against the Tigers. By then, he was a knuckleball pitcher exclusively, surmising it was the only way to keep his career alive. He was right, but not in 2006. In what would end up being his only start, Dickey gave up 6 homers, 5 of them solo shots, the only, quote, positive manager Buck Showalter could take from the disaster. Dickey was taken out in the 4th and never appeared in a Rangers uniform again. He was sent back to the minors, and then, in October, released. At the time, he was 31 years old. Most careers would have been over, maybe a few seasons of independent ball would follow, but Dickey wasn't ready to quit. The demons from his youth kept chasing him, and sports had been his solace since he was 8. Quitting sports meant letting the demons win. He'd struggled with suicidal ideations in the winter of 2005, and so Dickey knew what horrors could take place in lieu of the grind of professional sports. There was no way he could quit, which didn't mean he thought he'd succeed. Success at that point was staying alive, and baseball was his best shot to do so. It's probably starting to make more sense why R.A. Dickey tried to swim across the Missouri River. He was running away from the same thing that had hounded him for 24 years. It also makes sense why he would sign a minor league deal with the Milwaukee Brewers, whose AAA affiliate was in Nashville, Dickey's hometown and the hometown of his abusers and his unending pain. Maybe it was cathartic, possibly it was destructive. Dickey wrote about episodes of self-destruction, including an affair that nearly cost him his marriage. But one thing was finally working: his knuckleball. He perfected the grip, and in 2007 got on a roll for an extended period, going 13-6 with a 3.72 ERA. His hits per 9 innings dropped to a career best 8.5. He was giving up less homers than ever as well. He was voted the PCL Pitcher of the Year, yet the Brewers never called him up. He was still considered AAA roster filler. Then things got weird in pure R.A. Dickey fashion. The Brewers released Dickey in October, and by then, the end really seemed to be nigh. This time, Dickey even considered going to play in Korea, but then he got an offer by the Twins in November for $525,000, just above the MLB minimum salary. But because he wasn't put on the 40-man roster, Dickey was eligible for the Rule 5 draft, and he was selected by the Mariners in December. In March 2008, the Mariners sent him back to Minnesota, who then traded him directly back to the Mariners in exchange for Jair Fernandez. Despite his knuckleball's progress, the Mariners didn't break camp with Dickey, but did recall him a few weeks later. Yeah, that's a lot in the way of unique transactions. The long journey to superstardom wasn't over. Dickey would spend time in Tacoma, Rochester, and Buffalo. He had to keep bouncing around AAA during this time because his numbers were pretty awful. More hits than innings pitched and an ERA in the vicinity of 5. For a knuckleball to work, it can maybe spin a quarter of an inch. Anything more is BP to big leaguers, and RA's was still spinning like a top all too often. The pattern continued for the next couple years: sign a one-season deal and get released. Ironically, this happened again with both the Mariners and the Twins. At age 35, before the 2010 season, Dickey signed yet another minor league deal, this time with the Mets, who promptly started him off at AAA. But it was then that things finally started to turn around for Dickey. In one AAA start early in the year, RA allowed a bloop single to lead off the game, and then set down the next 27 batters, registering a very rare reverse perfect game, sorta kinda. Still, the Mets didn't recall him for 5 more weeks. When he finally did get a start on May 19th, he gave up just 2 earned runs over 6 innings, getting a no decision against the Nationals. Finally, he was in the big leagues to stay. And he was good. In fact, really good. By the end of 2010, he had gone 11-9 with an ERA of 2.84, good enough for 7th in the NL. In 2011, his record slipped to 8-13, but his ERA remained a robust 3.28. He gave up less than a homer per 9 innings, with his batting average against coming in at 280, well below league average. He got a lot of ground balls and gave up few fly balls, with a ground ball to fly ball ratio of 1.05. His ERA plus was 112, 12 points above league average. But no one could have predicted what would happen next, when RA would follow somewhat comparatively moderate success up with perhaps the greatest knuckleball season of all time. During spring training of 2012, he published his first book, Wherever I Wind Up, which got glowing reviews. Some even compared it to one of the best baseball books of all time, Ball 4, with Dickey's perspective being seen as incredibly earnest and emotionally laden, with an analysis of life in professional baseball that was especially illuminating. After conquering the literary world, he went on to win one of the most unlikely Cy Young awards in MLB history, going 20-6 with an ERA of 2.73. He led the league with 33 starts, 5 complete games, 3 shutouts, and 233 strikeouts. He threw back-to-back one-hitters. On top of all this, he barely walked 2 batters a game. Remarkable, considering his primary offering was a dancing knuckler. He threw extremely hard, around 80 miles per hour. His ERA plus was almost 40 points better than league average at 139. CBS writer C. Trent Rosecrans wrote that it, quote, was perhaps the most unique season ever by a knuckleballer, while also listing it amongst the best ever overall, right up there with the top campaigns by Hall of Famers Phil Niekro and Hoyt Wilhelm, modern legend Tim Wakefield, and the iconic lefty Wilbur Wood, who once posted a sub-2 ERA with the eclectic offering. Impressive company, surely. But the Mets were a 4th place team, so recognizing the stock of their then 37-year-old pitcher wasn't going to get any higher, traded him to the Toronto Blue Jays for 2 outstanding prospects, Noah Syndergaard and Travis d'Arnaud. With the Blue Jays between 2013 and 2016, Dickey posted solid seasons, always hovering around a 100 ERA plus. He was also paid for the first time in his career, making $41 million over those 4 seasons. His magical year of 2012, for which he was paid just $4.25 million, propelled Dickey to riches beyond his wildest dreams. The Braves were the last team that Dickey would suit up for, with him getting paid $8 million in total for a 2017 season that saw him throw 190 innings of 102 ERA plus baseball. He was 42 years old at the time. Often, survivors of childhood abuse face uncertain outcomes. Some may get the help they need and flourish, while others keep the cycle of abuse going and lead forlorn, forsaken lives. If anything, Dickey's story has to have given solace to some of those who've suffered in silence like he did. Who knows how many attempted something like Dickey's swim across the Missouri River and failed to make it out alive. All I know is that that number is definitely lower as a result of him telling his story. It took Dickey years before he told his wife about what he'd endured as a child. The magnitude of his suffering is perhaps proportional to the magnitude of his generosity. Dickey continues to speak, counsel, write, and raise money for the causes he deeply cares about. That incredible year of 2012 speaks volumes to Dickey's unfathomable will and determination. After all, minor league baseball gets harder for players who reach their 30s, and especially those for someone who throws something as outlandish as the knuckleball. Currently, MLB has only one active pitcher who regularly throws the pitch, Matt Waldron of the Padres. If you could go back in time and examine the chances of Dickey mastering that pitch to become the only knuckleballer in MLB history to win a Cy Young, you'd think they were so small you might need a quantum computer to calculate the odds. Yet, he did it, and stacked intergenerational wealth in the years that followed, all while throwing up year after year of solid baseball. What a story, what a career, and what an insanely impressive human being. Now, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and click this playlist for other essay content just like this. Have a great day, everyone.